Hello once again, welcome to another lessons on basic HTML. So for this particular video, I'm going to explain about HTML attributes. Alright, so I'm going to discuss why this is important and how we use them in HTML. We will also learn new things such as how to insert images into our website. So we're going to learn not only to insert the default size of the image, but also learn how to be able to control its width and height using the width and height attributes. We will also learn the different ways to insert images, and that is using relative or absolute URL, and also how to use the alt attribute, which is very useful if the browser could not find that particular image that you want to insert into your website. I will also be teaching with you how to specify a particular language in your HTML code, also how to add tooltips, and how to insert or create hyperlinks inside your site, and how to be able to open them in another tab. Alright, so let's start with the HTML attributes. So all HTML elements can have attributes, which was not present in the first video in HTML examples they have given you. So what are HTML attributes? They actually provide additional information about the elements. In other words, it provides additional control about how those elements will be displayed. So the attributes are always specified in the start tag. Now remember that you can have the start tag and the end tag. Now usually attributes, or always the attributes, are placed in the start tag and not in the end tag. So also another thing that you have to understand is that attributes usually come in names or value pairs. So for example, you have the name of the attribute and then the equal sign and then the value, which is by standard enclosed in double quotes. So let me give you the first example of an attribute, and we have here the src. So we're going to learn how to insert images. So we insert images in HTML using the src attribute. So you have the image tag, which is used to embed an image in the HTML page. Now the image tag is empty. It contains attributes only, and it has no closing tag. So that means you cannot find a /img anywhere on any HTML document. Now, so the img, or the image tag, has an additional attribute, and that is the src, meaning the source attribute. So it specifies the path to the image that you want to display in that particular website. So the value of the src is the file name of your image. In this case here, if you want to insert an image of, for example, a dog that is saved as img_keeper.jpg, you have to use img space src, or source, image source, is equal to, and then the name of the file name, which is in this case in JPEG form. And it doesn't have an end tag, meaning you cannot find another tag that says /img. So this is an empty tag. Now notice that at the bottom of this page you have an example. You have width and height. So width and height here are additional attributes in your image tag. So it specifies the width and the height in pixels for that particular file. So this means that wherever you put this particular tag, you want to insert an image, the source, meaning the file name, is equivalent or located as img_keeper.jpg, and then you have another attribute if you want to specify the width and the height. So there are two examples on this slide. Now, so that means to say that your width and height are actually optional. In fact, you can use just the width attribute or just the height attribute. Okay, so I have more examples here. So as you can see, you have just like the previous HTML video that I shared with you, we specify that this is an HTML document first, and then we have the usual head and title part of our site or our HTML code, which is going to be displayed under or on top of your tab, About Keeper. And then inside your body/body tags, you have a heading which displays, you know me, now meet our pet dash keeper. So that explains why you have a very big text here on top of your content. And then you have a paragraph. And you have a paragraph which says, this is Keeper, he is 7 years old, he is half Chow Chow and half Maltese. We have 7 other dogs in the house, but he is the most fierce and fearless. And then that's the end of the first paragraph, after which you have an empty tag which is supposed to insert the image which with a file name called keeper.jpg. So if the browser will be able to find keeper.jpg in your local computer, in this case this is stored in the local computer, then it will display the file as is. Now, however, as what you have seen in the previous slide, if you want to make this photo a bit smaller, you want to control its width and height, then you have to add an additional attribute for the width and the height. So the image tag could also contain the width and the height attributes, which specifies the width and the height of the image in pixels. So one is going to be very short because we're not referring to this in centimeters or inches. So this is 500 pixels with 600 pixels height. All right. Now, so if you have a file called image_girl.jpg, then this is the specified width and height. So you can decide what width and height is more appropriate for that photo or for the website or the design that you are trying to create. And then you have here another file called keeper.jpg. Alright, so going back to our example earlier, we can actually control the size of the file by specifying the width and the height attribute. Alright, so at this point, you might want to pause this particular video so that you can try out how to insert an image into your HTML file and at the same time be able to control the width and the height of the image. Alright, so I hope you took time to try out the codes that I have shared with you using a different file name, perhaps a different photo, and probably varying locations. So some of you may not be successful at first try, and I might be able to shed some light as to why. So there are actually 2 ways to specify the URL in the src attribute, meaning the location of the files that you're trying to insert. So there's what you call an absolute URL, and there's also what you call a relative URL. So when you say absolute URL, this means that the links to an external image is hosted in another website. So for example, you can actually say image or img src is equal to, and then the name of the external location of your image, which is in JPEG form. So in this case, the example says the file 11737.jpg is located into or sourced out in another website called metmuseum.org. So that means if your file or if your photo is can actually be found when your browser tries to insert the image, then it will be able to insert that image into your website. Now, please take note that external images might be under copyright, so be careful when using this or photos from the internet. I'm sure that when you were in another lesson, you were taught on how to find images that you can freely reuse for the use of your website. Now, so if that means if the image is under copyright and you do not get permission to use it, you might be in a violation of copyright law. So be very careful about using external images. Also, please note that you cannot control these images because it can suddenly be moved or transferred or changed by the user of that particular image or the owner of that particular image. Now, so to continue, the other way that we can specify the URL in the src attribute is using a relative URL. So relative URL means that the links to that particular image is hosted within the website. So in our case, it might be in the same computer that you are using, but it may be in a different location or different folder. So here the URL does not include the domain name. Now, unlike in the example here, you have www.metmuseum.org. So if the URL begins without a slash, it will be relative to the current page. And I will give you examples of this later on. Now, so tip, it's almost always best to use relative URL because you are always in control of the image that will be displayed into your website. It will also not break if you change the domain. So to give you examples of this absolute or relative URL, let's focus on the relative URL, by the way. So the first example here is that assuming that you have, like in the case of this video, my file, which is the HTML file, is named sample1. So since my default browser is my Microsoft Edge, so hence the icon that is used when you view this file in your file explorer. Alright, so now my image, which is the JPEG file keeper, is found on the same folder, samples for class. So when you open or when you run this one, when you try to insert this image keeper into your website or try to display this into your browser, you can actually just say image src is equal to keeper.jpg. No need to put any slash, no need to put any particular folder on it. So that is the example that I have shown you earlier. Now, my next example is that what if you have a folder, in the same folder samples for class, you have a folder named images, and that is where supposedly the browser should find the image that you wish to display in their website. So as you can see here, if you're going to use the same code as what I have shown you in the previous slide, image src is equal to keeper.jpg, it's not going to be able to find that image anymore. So it will not display any image. As you can see here, you have the image icon and nothing, no dog, no keeper is displayed on your website when you open this particular file in your browser. So what should you do? So if your file keeper is under the folder images, then you can actually put images slash and then the name of the file. So of course, depending on the name of your folder, you specified here and then you put the slash that would indicate or separate the folder name from the name of your file, and so you will be able to find or display that image into your page already. So you might want to try different scenarios and where to save your JPEG file so that you can display that particular image into your sample or practice file or folder. Alright, now the next example I'm going to show you is that what if directly under drive C or in the root directory you have a folder named images. So in that case, you have to precede the word images or the name of your folder with a slash. That means to say that it will start looking from the root directory or from the drive, from the root drive in your folder, and then look for images and then keeper.jpg. So you should be able to show that as well, even if you transfer images directly right under drive C. Alright, so I hope that made it very clear on what happens if the file name or the file that you want to display as an image in your website is located in different scenarios. So kindly try moving your file in different locations, either on the same folder as your HTML file, perhaps in another folder in the same in another level as your HTML file. So under the folder where your HTML file is located, I want you to create a folder and transfer your JPEG file there. And then finally, I also want you to transfer your file directly under drive C or drive D for that matter, or perhaps from a USB port, and try to see or try to solve how to display that particular image into your HTML or into your browser when you run your HTML code. So at this point, kindly pause your video again for another test. Good luck. Okay, to continue with our discussion, I will share with you the alt attribute. So the required alt attribute for the img tag specifies an alternate text for an image if the image for some reason cannot be displayed. So some would specify this is a required attribute, but this is actually what for me, for a personal point of view, this is something that is optional but something that is recommended. So reasons that your file or image cannot be displayed may be due to slow internet connection, or perhaps an error in the src attribute, or perhaps the user could not uses a screen reader, or perhaps the file name is specified incorrectly, wrong spellings, wrong locations of the file, etc. So if you try to display an image that does not exist, the value of the alt attribute will be displayed instead, and that is the beauty of using the alt attribute. So let me give you an example. In the previous slides earlier, if the browser could not find a file that you wish to display in your HTML code, like in this case, src is equal to keeper.jpg. Now remember that keeper is not on the same folder as your HTML file, and so when you try to open it in your browser, it displays this particular icon, and that means, you see, it could not find that image, it could not load that image into your site. So supposedly you would need to put a slash image, rather images slash sample1.jpg into your code. Now however, if you're looking at this particular website from a point of view of the user could only guess what is supposedly displayed on this part of your website. Okay, so the best thing that you need to do there is to add the alt attribute. So how do you use the alt attribute? You just simply put this to get, or inside your image tab, just say alt is equal to, and then the text that you want to be displayed. If in case for some reason the image keeper.jpg could not be loaded into your browser. So as you can see here, it's still unable to display the image for some reason, but it displays right next to the icon, it displays pet photo, which is the text that you indicate inside the code of your alt attribute. So that's the beauty of your alt. So I want you to go back to your file at this point and perhaps add an alt attribute. Okay, the next attribute that I wish to share with you is the lang attribute. So lang actually stands for language, and it is actually recommended that you use the lang attribute inside the HTML tag. As you can see here, after the HTML tag, you have lang is equal to en. So this is actually for the use of the search engine and in your browser. So it declares the language of the web page. So in this case, if the language of your web page is in English, then you have to use lang is equal to en. So the following example specifies English as the language, and country codes can actually also be added to the language code in the lang attribute. So for instance, you can say en is equal to en-us. That means to say that the country is US. It's in English. So you can actually go ahead and go to Google, search for ISO country code reference or HTML language code reference in order to find out what should be the best lang attribute or lang value that you're going to put if you're going to declare it as an English language in the Philippines. Now, moving on, I'm going to also share with you the title attribute. So the title attribute defines some extra information about the element, and the beauty about it is that it uses a tooltip wherein if you hover your mouse over the element, it will be displayed. So as you can see here, you have title is equal to tooltip on header. So when you hover your mouse over this particular code, this particular word references in your browser, it will actually display something like this, and it will display tooltip on header. Now, notice that you cannot only use this in headings, but you can also use this in paragraphs. So for instance, you have here P, which is normally just the tag that we use. Now, you add the attribute title is equal to sample tooltip. And so what happens is that you have the text, this is a sample paragraph that is by default displayed on your browser. But when you move your mouse over this paragraph, it will display tooltip on header. Isn't that pretty and exciting? So at least there's some interaction that happens into your very simple HTML file. So at this point, I want you to try inserting the language and the country into your HTML file, and also add some tooltips. So pause the video and go back to your file. Okay, so we're back, and I hope that you were able to try out all the other lessons that we have had so far. Now, the next question might be, what is the best case that we're supposed to use for attributes? Is it uppercase, lowercase, or a combination of both? So actually the answer is HTML standard actually does not require lowercase attribute names, although so far I know that you noticed that all of those attributes and tags have been in lowercase letters. The title attribute and all other attributes can actually be written with uppercase or lowercase title or letters, like small letter title here, or capital letter title. However, the W3C recommends lowercase attributes in HTML, so let's just use that in all of our documents for uniformity, and so that we can standardize it that way. So also, please take note that XHTML demands lowercase attributes for stricter document types. Alright, so P title is equal to Silliman should be also very specific. Notice that if you ask, is the attribute or the value inside your attribute Silliman, for instance, in this case, should it be enclosed with double quotes? Actually, no, it's not really actually required, but it's recommended. So we will use double quotes in all of our examples and also in the exam. Also, especially if you have more than one word in the value, so you really have to use double quotes, because it might not be displayed correctly if you don't if you do it otherwise. So for example, if you say P title is equal to Silliman University, you need to enclose Silliman University with double quotes. Now let's move on to another lesson, which is on HTML links. Now, so you might want to add links to another page or links to another file inside your HTML codes. So HTML uses an anchor tag A to create a link to another document, okay, or as I said, link to another site. So the anchor tag uses the attribute href to address the document to link to, and the words between the open and the close of the anchor tag will be displayed as hyperlink. So href actually stands for hyperlink reference. Alright, so for example here, if you want Silliman University to be clickable, such that when you click on it, it will go to the Silliman University website with the URL https://www.sc.edu.ph, then you have to enclose Silliman University with the A/A tag. So the A actually stands for anchor, and then you have href is equal to, and then you have the URL of the website where you want the user to be brought if he or she clicks on Silliman University. Okay, I can give you an example. So for example here, you have H2, so this is heading to the href attribute, so you have it here on the right side of your screen. And then you have a paragraph which simply displays the A tag is used to define HTML links. The href attribute contains the link address. Okay, so there's no external link or a hyperlink on this particular paragraph, but after it is a text, visit Silliman University, that is enclosed with the anchor tags. So this means that when the user clicks on Visit Silliman University, it will bring him or her to su.edu.ph. So it is displayed like this. So the whole 3 words is clickable. Another example could be just a part of the paragraph or a statement or a heading. So in this case, this is a paragraph. So the entire paragraph or the entire text is enclosed with the p/p tags. But inside the p/p tags, you have an anchor tag which only encloses the word website. So as you can see here in the output, out of the entire paragraph line or sentence, only the website is clickable, and it will do the same thing. It will bring the user to Silliman University website, su.edu.ph. Okay, so at this point, I want you to try modifying or inserting something into your page again. It can be a file an HTML file that is located in a folder. So just like inserting images, the HTML file may be located on the same folder as your main file. Now it may also be located in another folder or another location. So just use the slash examples on relative locations that I have explained or shared with you when we talked about images. Or you may also experiment on how to bring the user to an external website like YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever. So whatever you put inside your href attribute. So please go back to your file and insert some paragraphs just to test it out, and then use the anchor href link. See you in a while. Okay, so I have here another example, but nevertheless, this is still going to open the su.edu.ph website. But in this case, you have a paragraph that displays, to know more about this university, please visit, and then this link. These links are the only words that are clickable because these are the 2 words that are enclosed by the a/a or the anchor tags. Alright, so what happens when the user clicks on this link is that it will load the Silliman University web page on the same tab where this original file has been opened. Now, what will you do if you want to open this link and you want it to automatically open another tab and load that particular link on that new tab? So what you should do is just to add an additional attribute, and that attribute is just called target. So as you can see here, there's actually very small difference between the example that I gave in the previous slide to this particular slide. The only difference is that I added an attribute called target. Target is equal to double quote underscore blank double quote. Now it simply means that when the user clicks on this link, it will open su.edu.ph website, and then it will open it in a blank tab. So this means that when I click on this link, it will not load this or override this particular file or open it on the same tab, but rather this link will be opened by opening another tab and loading the website that you specify in your anchor link on that particular tab. So I want you to try this out. I want you to add the target is equal to underscore blank enclosed in double quotes in your HTML file and try it out. So just like our discussion earlier, please note that double quotes are actually not required, but it is recommended. So I recommend and I want you to make it a habit to add double quotes into all the values of your attribute. So you need to put double or enclose double quote, enclose underscore blank in your double quotes, just like your URL here. So kindly go back to your file now. Alright, so we're back. I hope you were able to test it out. Now, and for this particular slide, I just want to reiterate the importance of your double quotes. So please, again, remember that HTML standard does not actually require quotes around attribute values, but during the exam, and because I want to make sure that you make this a habit, double quotes are required. So for instance, if you say a href is equal to https www.edu.edu.ph, please never forget to put the double quotes before and after, because that's very important, especially for stricter document types like XHTML. And so with that, I hope that you learned a lot in this particular video, and also in essence improved all your websites. So I want you to go back to this website again if you want to try something out, and I will leave you a challenge which will be posted in a separate video. But I'd like to end with a summary. So for this video, we learned about HTML attributes. We learned how to insert images and also add more attributes like width and height. We also learned the difference between relative and absolute URL, and how to manipulate your HTML codes given different scenarios on where the image that you want to insert is actually located. We also learned to manipulate around those whose internet connection may be slow, or for some reason there are still errors in specifying your file or specifying the location of your file in your image source code, and that is with the use of the alt attribute. So the alt attribute is very helpful so that your viewers may at least have an idea on what is supposed to be found on that part of your document. We also learned how to use or specify a language, which is very beneficial for search engines. We also learned how to add some sort of interaction into your website using tooltips. And we also learned how to create hyperlinks and even opening those links in another tab. So with that, I'd like to say thank you so much, and good luck in the other learnings that we will have in the future, and in applying all these things in the website that you are working on right now.